Hi there Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video, and welcome to episode 110 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly series where you ask me questions in the comment section below, and every week I do my very best to answer them for you. So if you do have a question for next week's episode, please leave it in the comment section below, and hopefully you'll be featured next week. Just quickly, I would like to apologise for the lack of a video on Boxing Day. Let's just say that the situation in the Bossk household went from bad to worse before it got kind of a little bit better. So my wife is now home from the hospital and she's in our care, and that's definitely the best place for her. She can recover a lot quicker at home, and it's just great to have her back. But doing these videos does help me as well, because it does allow me to sort of break away from certain things and put my mind to something else. It definitely relaxes me and allows me to concentrate on something else. Not that I'm neglecting my wife, of course, I would never do that, but it definitely does help me doing these videos. So thank you all for tuning in, and let's get on to the first question. Major Camo says, prayers for your family, Bossk. Question for next week: why doesn't Hasbro just bring back the antenna clone trooper mold but with updated articulation? Oh man, I wish they would do that personally. And to answer your question, I don't know why they don't do that. I think it's the fact that they've just got this mold now and that's the one they're sort of using. So this is the new one, as we know, VC45. A little bit on the skinny side, oversized helmet, and this is the antenna mold. This is the classic. This is Commander Appo from the Saga collection, and as you can see, it's in much better proportions. His legs look like there is actually a human leg within that armor, but as we know, there is limited articulation for these. There's no ball hinges, for example, on the waist, which does restrict him, especially as he's a clone. You want to be able to get him into all sorts of different poses, and there's no removable helmet either. But the fact that it's not a removable helmet does actually make it more in scale, and these figures just look great on display. But of course, you probably would want to articulate them and set them up in all different poses and things like that, especially if you had a little army of them. So maybe that's why they've gone with that. But yep, if they were to just improve the articulation on that mold, I would be extremely happy with that. Lee Powell says, question for next week: with the recent Battlefront II ARC troopers being revealed, do you think we can expect more figures from that game, such as Clone Commando, Commando Droid, Jet Trooper? These could also be put into Army Builder 4-packs. It'll probably just come down to how much of a success those figures are, and judging by the pre-sales that I can witness from the sort of community response to them and what have you, I can see that those were a roaring success. I mean, everybody loves these figures as far as I know. And of course, they are just repaints of this figure. It's a great looking figure. It does have its faults, which we will come on to in a minute on another question. But in terms of more figures from the games and Battlefront 2 and things like that, I think it always has to depend on whether there is already a figure that they could, you know, reuse. Because as I mentioned just now, all of the ones for Battlefront 2 are a repaint of this figure. And that seems to be the trend with the gaming greats. You know, some of them are exclusives, and whenever there is an exclusive, they do tend to be like repacks and repaints and things like that. And that's not just for the vintage collection as well, that is for the Black Series too. Wayne says, awesome video. Do you think they'll ever release a vintage collection Frog Lady from The Mandalorian? Absolutely loved her character in that episode. And do you think that they'd re-release a Jabba's throne set with the newer Jabba sculpt? So to answer the first part of your question, the TVC Frog Lady, I mean, a year ago I would have said no. Right now I think anything's possible from that TV show. I think they're doubling down on The Mandalorian, and the fact that we got the Mithril, and that shows me that these characters are entirely possible in the vintage collection. As for Jabba's throne room, I think we'd probably have to wait for 2023 for the anniversary of Return of the Jedi. I could definitely see them using the Jabba from the sail barge and giving them an all-new throne and all that. And that would go very nicely with that playset. So I think that's a distinct possibility, and fingers crossed it happens. GA says, hi BB, question for next week, and spoiler alert from the Book of Boba Fett. So if you haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett, you might want to skip this question. Do you think Disney and Hasbro have done some joined up thinking with their inclusion of certain characters in the Book of Boba Fett? I'm thinking that the original 96, like 8D8 and Hammerhead, yet to be released in TVC, will be more viable at retail given their appearances in the Book of Boba Fett. The appearances of Max Rebo and Figurin Dan evoke similar thoughts. Thanks as always, and best wishes for 2022. So these two characters here, obviously he featured prominently in the episode, and we're going to get a Ithorian, is that what they're called? A Hammerhead. I think he's going to end up being the mayor that they talked about. And yeah, I think, you know, in terms of joined up thinking, I was watching a live stream with John Miko and Mr. Stevie, who works at Hasbro, and he was saying that, you know, Lucasfilm and Hasbro are on the phone daily. They're talking to each other all of the time. So, and if we look at the Death Star droid as a great example, he was like the barman in the cantina in The Mandalorian, but he serves a dual purpose. So I think that's what you're getting at, GA, is that essentially we got the Death Star droid in the same year that he featured in The Mandalorian, and I think that's definitely something that they look at. So 8D8 would be a great one to tick off, as you say, in the original 96, and would work even more so now because he was in the Book of Boba Fett. Rob Ernest says, question for next week. You said that the ship has sailed with the sequel trilogy in the Vintage Collection, but is there a character that didn't appear in the Vintage Collection from the sequels that you wouldn't mind seeing appear in the Vintage Collection? Or perhaps better tooling, paint on a released figure? So when I say the ship has sailed, I kind of mean for now. I mean, you know, in 5 years' time, who knows what they're going to do? They may start releasing some of those figures, you know, like a 5-year anniversary of The Force Awakens or something like that. But for the moment, they've just got too much other stuff to do. The Vintage Collection is always going to give you your original trilogy characters, which we crave for. But of course, it's also got to keep up with the new media, which there is tons of this year. We will be seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi figures this year. We know we're seeing Book of Boba Fett figures this year. There will no doubt be Andor figures this year, probably. And hopefully some Bad Batch figures as well when Season 2 of that happens. So there's all sorts of stuff for them to concentrate on. So when it comes to the sequel trilogy, you know, I could see that happening much, much further down the line. In terms of a character that I would like to see, I mean, the one for me that was always missing really was Finn. I actually thought the Black Series 3.75 inch version of that figure wasn't a bad figure. Then we've got people like Poe Dameron in his normal outfit rather than his pilot outfit. You've got General Hux. The list goes on. We're missing so many from all three films. It's very difficult to just pick one, to be honest. But I've got to admit, the sequel trilogy for me is so far in the back of my mind, I don't really think about it because, you know, I want things like clones, I want Mandalorian figures, I want Book of Boba Fett and all the new shows. So unfortunately the sequel trilogy is kind of last on my list. Carl Jones says, hey Boss Bounty, hope your wife gets better soon. Do you think Hasbro will skip the Attack of the Clones anniversary next year because they've got a lot of media to focus on, like The Mandalorian? I personally don't think they're going to make a massive hoo-ha about the anniversary necessarily, but I do think we will see some figures from Attack of the Clones, and also I think we're going to see some that we desperately want and need from Attack of the Clones. So let's just put it like that. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's safe to say that we will see some Attack of the Clones figures before the year is out. David Stevens says, Merry Christmas, Tim, and very best wishes to you and your family. Question for next week. We have had a lot of clones being released or announced recently. The cynic in me feels that it is an easy way for Hasbro to print money, repaints, and no new tooling costs. How do you feel about the focus of TVC currently? So when it comes to this sort of thing, I completely separate store exclusives and things like that to the main line. So when I look at the main line, I think the main line's very healthy. You just got to look at the previous wave to see that, where we got Bib Fortuna, Lobot, Bo-Katan, Queel, the Mythrol, you know, absolutely fantastic wave. Now the store exclusives probably wouldn't happen apparently if the stores weren't interested in stocking the figures. So for me, they are just extras. You don't really have to buy them if you don't want. And if they're going to do repaints and if they're going to do retooling and things like that, I would rather it be clones than shiny sort of gimmicky figures. I don't want gimmicks in the Vintage Collection. I want sort of figures that I can actually use and display. And if they're just clones or repainted troopers or something like that, then yeah, I guess I'm happy with the way things are going in that respect. Django Mall says, great video and have a great Christmas, boss. Question for next week. What do you think of the new archive line that we will release next year? It's good Palpatine and C-3PO are getting re-released as long as 3PO is the A New Hope version. So these are the Black Series, aren't they? Now, when I think about the archive line, I think it should definitely be a line of figures that were just really, really hard to get and allowing new collectors to be able to get them. Now, the Emperor is definitely one of those figures. He only came in that sort of exclusive with the throne. Really difficult to get hold of. really expensive on the secondary market. Great that they're re-releasing him, albeit without the throne. At least you're getting the figure, I guess. So in that respect, Palpatine's a good choice. I'm sorry, I don't really know the other figures from the wave, but if C-3PO again is a hard figure for people to get hold of, then it's a smart move. It's when they start repacking figures that aren't really that hard to get that I don't really see the point in it. Gary Moore says, wishing the Bossk household a very merry and wonderful Christmas. Question for the Boxing Day special. Sorry about that, Gary. Do you expect significant changes at Hasbro with the announcement of Patrick getting a promotion? I watched the Marvel team recently and their hour show was fantastic. So much passion and details regarding the new releases. Well, to be honest, I don't really know who's going to be replacing Patrick. I think Patrick's position was like head of marketing for the Star Wars brand team, and I'm not really too sure what his new role will be. I think it will encompass multiple brands within the business, maybe not just Star Wars. So I think the important thing really is not necessarily what he's going to be doing, but who's going to be replacing him. And I don't know who that is yet. I haven't heard, or if I have heard, I've completely forgotten with everything that's been going on. But I think only time will tell, mate. See what happens. But I think really the most important people in the team are the creative director and the designers, because obviously they're the people that actually decide what gets made and if things can be made and how they're made. At the end of the day, I think Patrick he's the marketing man. He's the guy that projects it to us and gets us interested with us. Now, whether you think he did a good job or a bad job is another matter. And obviously you're saying there with the Marvel team do a fantastic job with their presentation. So maybe that aspect of it will change. I don't know, but I wish him all the best, Patrick. As far as I know, he's a nice guy, and it's just a guy doing his job. Luke Fernley says, question for next week: with the reveal of the most recent Gaming Greats ARC Troopers, do you think we may eventually see them reuse this mould again to give us the 4 ARC Troopers seen in the Clone Wars: Colt, Havoc, Blitz and Hammer? And do you think they might change some of the parts of the sculpt to make them better quality? Personally, I'd like to see them use the soft goods Camo instead, especially after seeing the great quality soft good Camas on the other recent figures. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, it just comes down to the success of those figures. If they're successful, then I can see them doing some more. And yeah, Colt, Havoc, Blitz and Hammer would be awesome figures. And I totally agree with you. I would much prefer a soft goods Cama on this figure. Something like Rex has got here. And a figure that's like in between these two would be awesome. They've just got to fine tune this guy, I think. Everything about this figure is really good, except for the Cama, I think, because it does restrict the articulation. So, but obviously with those Gaming Greats ones that have just been announced, I think Hasbro believe that we really, really like these figures, and they've repainted it 3 times already. So let's see what happens in the future. But this is the sort of thing that we do need to relay back to Hasbro, because it has worked in the past. Some of the community asked for rocker ankles on the Stormtrooper. Specifically, my mate Chris from Bantha Skull, he was going on about that a lot. Please don't make any more Stormtroopers without giving him rocker ankles. And Bob's your uncle, the one that came with the E-Web cannon, now has rocker ankles. So Hasbro do listen to the fans, and they do take these things on board. And hopefully, as you say, this guy with a soft goods Cama and a different belt would be much, much better. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Do hit the like button if you happen to enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you so much to my channel members and Patreon supporters. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you all for watching, and we shall see you on the next one.